Hi and very warm welcome at Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Following news headlines have been reported by world major English news channels and news agencies. So please watch it.
On PBS News Weekend, shake up at the Pentagon, what the potential consequences are for the military and the nation. Then, which parts of the Project 2025 blueprint is the Trump administration already implementing and how they could touch Americans' lives? And we explore how generational trauma affects African American women.
It's important to recognize the ways that stigma related to having a mental health condition as well as participating in treatment might be a barrier to one engaging and helping to normalize some of those activities.
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. One officer is dead, several staff members shot after a gunman opens fire inside a Pennsylvania hospital. New concerns for Pope Francis, his condition worsening as he struggles with a respiratory infection. And President Trump's military purge, top leaders forced down. First, that chaotic scene inside a Pennsylvania hospital. Authorities saying a gunman opened fire in the ICU, shooting 3 staff members and 3 officers, one of whom was killed. The suspect then holding a person hostage before he was shot and killed. What investigators are telling us tonight. Pope Francis in critical condition after suffering a new respiratory crisis. Francis given oxygen and a blood transfusion as his condition worsens. The Vatican now saying the Pope is not out of danger. President Trump touting the unprecedented shakeup at the Pentagon. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff out. The Navy's top admiral fired too. The president also praising Elon Musk and Doge, urging Musk to be even more aggressive in shrinking the U.S. government. Ukraine's counteroffer. ABC News has learned Ukraine is open to giving some of its mineral wealth to the U.S., but only a fraction of the $500 billion that President Trump is seeking as part of a peace deal with Russia. Hamas releases 6 more Israeli hostages as the ceasefire nears the end of phase 1. But will there be a second phase? United Health Group reportedly being investigated for questionable billing, the stock falling, employee buyouts being offered. All of this just months after its CEO was gunned down in New York City. The suspect making a new court appearance. New questions about the U.S. economy. Home sales are down and how consumers are feeling about inflation. Plus the winter warm-up coming to much of the country. Spring-like temperatures moving in. And the road to the Oscars. 13 actors nominated for the first time. We'll speak with 2 of them about their life-changing roles.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York.
Tonight, breaking news from Rome. Pope Francis' condition worsens after a long health crisis. The Vatican reporting the 88-year-old pontiff in critical condition and more pain.
I'm Chris Lipsey in Rome, outside of Pope Francis' hospital, where the Holy See says he needed blood transfusions.
Also tonight, Pentagon purge. President Trump takes aim at the military's top ranks.
I'm Willie James, Inman at the White House, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and top naval admiral among those ousted in a flurry of firings.
Tears of joy and mourning in Israel.
I'm Deborah Patter in East Jerusalem. 6 more hostages freed by Hamas. The body of Shireen Bibas finally makes it home. What's next for the fragile ceasefire?
The Ozempic and Wegovy shortage ends, setting up a drug showdown with the copycats.
I'm Allie Bauman in New York. Why the booming market for these off-brand weight loss drugs is coming to an end and why it could cost patients more.
Plus, the Northwest gets a river of rain while winter cold melts away for millions in a weekend warm-up. And later, Eagle Watch. This famous California couple is trying for a family again after 2 years of heartbreak.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York.
The Vatican
Vatican says Pope Francis's health has deteriorated over the last 24 hours, describing his condition as critical. The Vatican says he suffered a prolonged asthma-like respiratory crisis and he had needed blood transfusions because of a low platelet count associated with anemia. And the doctors had to administer a high flow of oxygen because of his breathing crisis. But he remains alert, they say, though he is more unwell than yesterday, saying at the moment the prognosis remains guarded. Pope Francis was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on February 14th. He has since been diagnosed with pneumonia in both lungs, along with bacterial, viral, and fungal infections, on top of his chronic bronchitis. Outside the hospital, dozens gathered to pray.
We are here for him too, because we are faithful. But he always asks us to pray for him too, and we are here for that, and we hope he will come home soon.
Double pneumonia can inflame and scar both lungs, making it difficult to breathe. Of course, the Pope has a history of respiratory illness, having lost part of one lung as a young man and suffering from pneumonia in the past. Doctors have warned that at 88 years old, he is a fragile patient. We'll be watching this very closely. In London, Stephanie Bennett, Fox News.
Stephanie Bennett, thank you so much. Statement that we got from the doctor heading the team treating Pope Francis. It reads, quote, sepsis with his respiratory problems and his age would be really difficult to get out of, but this is the real risk in these cases, that these germs pass to the bloodstream. He knows he's in danger. Dr. Siegel.
Here's what we would look for in terms of sepsis. Blood pressure dropping, acid forming in the blood, and we would look for bacteria in the blood. We would monitor it, and that his respiratory status, breathing status gets worse and worse. They can tell by the stable vital signs and that he's not on a ventilator. I think that's key. He's not on a ventilator. He's awake and alert. Those are all very positive signs, but you know, as Stephanie pointed out, he has a scarred lung from a previous infection where they had to take out a piece of his lung. So he's scarring to begin with, and it spread to both lungs. Makes it very serious. I would think that what happened this morning with the asthma is something they probably got under control, because you can use bronchodilators to open up the lungs again and oxygen. If they can keep him stable like this while the antibiotics do their work, then he has a really good chance.
On this Saturday night, Pope Francis in peril. The elderly pontiff now in critical condition in hospital. What we know so far about his health after a week of struggling with illness. An emotional homecoming as 6 hostages are handed over by Hamas. But Israel's delay in its release of Palestinian prisoners is adding stress to an already unsteady ceasefire. The foreign interference fears in the German federal election as parties enter the final push. And pond hockey puck drop.
They got teams coming from all over the world.
How a beloved tradition is back in a small New Brunswick community and the massive effort to make it happen.
Global National reporting tonight. Little Gotcha.
Good evening and thanks.
Welcome to Daybreak here on France 24. I'm Alexander Orkot. These are the top headlines this hour. Elections to be held in Germany, with the far right making gains amid concern over the economy and migration. The pivotal vote is being followed closely around the world. Israel says it will indefinitely delay the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Hamas calls this a blatant violation of the ceasefire deal after it handed over 6 hostages. The health of Pope Francis deteriorates. The 88-year-old has had to have blood transfusions as he remains in a critical condition at a Rome hospital.
This is Asia Now.
Hello, it's 2 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 11:30 in New Delhi, and 1 o'clock in Jakarta and Abdullah. China accuses Australia of hyping completes over naval drills, claiming it provided adequate safety notices enacted within international law. Thousands gather in Japan's Imperial Palace to celebrate Emperor Naruhito's 65th birthday. The royal expresses his hope for peace ahead of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. And Pope Francis's health takes a turn for the worse. The Vatican now warning the pontiff is in a critical condition, requiring high-flow oxygen and blood transfusions.
What's
conversations. Why scroll when you can listen with your daily companion, the ABC Listen app?
Today, both Labor and the Coalition promise big Medicare spends, pitching to voters ahead of the next election. Prayers for Pope Francis after his condition worsens, leaving him in a critical condition. Israel says it won't go ahead with the release of Palestinian prisoners until guarantees are made over future hostage releases. And Australia beats England by 5 wickets in their opening Champions Trophy match in Lahore. This has been a magnificent innings of his life. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Selena Edmonds. Labor is promising 9 out of...
Hello, a very good morning. It's 6 o'clock. Coming up, the Vatican says the Pope is in a critical condition after spending more than a week in hospital with a respiratory illness.
Also ahead, police hunt for a van driver who fled the scene of a fatal tram crash in Manchester.
And England hang on for a first Calcutta Cup win in 5 years after Scotland missed a late conversion in the Six Nations at Twickenham.
It's Sunday, the 23rd of February. Pope Francis undergoes a blood transfusion as his condition worsens. The Vatican says he's not out of danger. Well, the Pope will miss Sunday prayers for a second week, and we expect an update on his health this morning. Also ahead, Israel says it's postponed the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners until the next handover of hostages is guaranteed. German voters head to the polls today to decide which party will run their next government. Plus, the Prime Minister's plea to President Trump to stand by Ukraine ahead of a high-stakes trip to Washington.
And in sport, Arsenal failed to apply pressure on Liverpool as they lose to West Ham, meaning the Premier League leaders could move 11 points clear later today.
Hello, very good morning, and thanks for joining us here on The Breakfast Show. Our top story here today, the Vatican...
Darren, thank you and good evening. The top stories. The Prime Minister has told President Zelensky he would discuss safeguarding Kiev's sovereignty with US President Donald Trump as he reiterated the UK's ironclad support in a call this morning. And Sir Keir Starmer and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen have also agreed Europe must step up for the good of the collective European security in a call today. Well, this comes as Starmer is expected to confirm a timeline to raise defence spending as he prepares to travel to Washington to meet Donald Trump next week. The Prime Minister will have to walk a tricky line stateside, balancing the UK's support for Ukraine with the need to keep the US on side. That's as President Trump has accused Emmanuel Macron and Sir Keir of doing nothing to end the war. Meanwhile, he also said Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin need to get together and thinks a peace deal can be done. Meanwhile, hundreds of people have been gathering in support of Ukraine as they march to the Russian embassy in central London. The marchers earlier assembled at a statue of Saint Vladimir, a national saint of Ukraine, near Holland Park. Protesters were seen carrying placards including "Stand with Ukraine, up to Putin and Trump, and don't betray Ukraine." Elsewhere, the 3 hostages released by terror group Hamas this morning have now entered into Israel, with the Israeli military reporting the 6th hostage has also been handed over and received by the military. Those returned are the last living hostages from a group of 33 being freed in the first stage of the ceasefire deal that took effect on the 19th of January. Israeli hostages Tal Shoham and Avira Mengistu were handed over to the Red Cross early this morning. In other news, a 3-year-old girl has died after being hit following a tram crash in Manchester. Police are currently in attendance on Mosley Street following the collision between a Metrolink tram and a white Mercedes-Benz van. Greater Manchester Police said the girl was taken to hospital after the crash, but she died from her injuries. No arrests have been made. Police are appealing for witnesses. And 3 people have been arrested in connection with the disappearance of a man who went missing more than 20 years ago. Robert Scott Clive, known as Scott, was last seen on the 10th of October in 2002 following a night out in North Shields, North Tyneside, where he'd moved to from Scotland a few months earlier. A murder investigation was launched despite no body being found. Northumbria Police said it's now arrested 2 men in their 40s and 50s and a woman in her 40s on suspicion of murder. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me in an hour.
Africa News. The news.
Rwanda on Friday came to the defense of its officials thrown by the US government over the war in eastern Congo. In a statement, Rwanda's government described the sanctions against General James Kabarebe, a deputy minister of foreign affairs, as, quote, unjustified and unfounded, end quote. Kigali called the sanctions counterproductive, saying they would not lead to peace in eastern Congo. The first sign of Washington's evolving policy toward Kigali came last year when the US described M23 as a Rwanda-backed group and asked Rwandan authorities to remove their missile systems from Congolese territory. Around 4,000 Rwandan troops are backing up M23, according to UN experts. Despite threats, few Western governments have sanctioned Rwanda over its aggression in neighboring Congo. Sanctions against Kabarebe are a blow to history. The head of the United Nations mission in Congo on Friday called for an immediate ceasefire and an end to hostilities in eastern Congo. Indicators peacekeeping forces have been criticized for not confronting the rebels as they marched on Goma and Bukavu cities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he held a productive meeting with the US envoy as the two nations moved closer to finalizing a mineral agreement. The proposed deal, which involves Ukraine supplying rare earth minerals in exchange for US aid, has been a focal point of recent negotiations. Earlier, Zelensky had criticized the draft for lacking sufficient security guarantees for Ukraine, leading to delays in its signing. However, during the meeting with US envoy Keith Kellogg, Zelensky expressed openness to a revised deal, emphasizing the need for mutual benefits and robust security provisions. Meanwhile, US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz asked to a revised guarantees for Ukraine in exchange for US aid has been a focal point of recent negotiations. Earlier, Zelensky had criticized the draft for lacking sufficient security guarantees for Ukraine, leading to delays in its signing.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shekel 5858. I am Amir Shekel. Have a good life. Bye-bye.